So I guess quickly, I started my career at EA. I worked on the Sims series, and then I went on to Sony. I was in strategy for a while, and then I decided to leave and start my own things. A few years ago, I started this new project, BattleTabs, and it started out as a browser extension game, and then now it sort of became this much bigger thing. And throughout this journey, we kind of continue to expand in terms of like the different platforms, the different like places we can distribute. Distribution has always been like top of mind. Um, and about, I guess, 5 years on, I found myself in this position where I'm now managing and running this thing pretty much all by myself. And it's not a game that I was technically capable of running. So I was very much a Unity front end developer. Even that, I would probably say sort of mediocre one. But BattleTabs is a game that's built with a web stack. So it's Node.js, React, Babylon.js, and backend multiplayer. So, it's complex, and I am definitely not sort of technical enough to really make a dent without some of the newer tools that we now have available to us. Like Demi said, so this is going to be me sharing my workflow. I'm going to try to keep this as sort of free flow as possible. So feel free to jump in with questions. I'm usually pretty casual, and I like to keep things sort of conversational. So don't think of this as like a lecture. Just, it's a conversation. I'm sharing my workflow, and because I'm not super technical to begin with, I won't go into technical details, but more on the orchestrating and workflow and how you manage these things. I think especially nowadays with agentic tools, a lot of the sort of how-to level type of knowledge, you can sort of offload that to the agents to work that out for you. Yeah, so that's a quick intro. Now, my journey started in 2024. I think things were getting really interesting with Cursor becoming bigger. Windsurf was another big one that was big at that time. And I knew that at some point I want to be more involved in the product development side of things. So in this company, I've been the main sort of business person. So I started playing with Windsurf, Cursor, and this is very much your sort of typical IDE with a sort of sidebar with an agent sort of telling you what to change or making changes directly occasionally. Back then, I then move on to exploring Klein and most open source extensions. And I was using Gemini with that for a while before I kind of move on to the Claude Code side of things. And for a very long time, up until I want to say end of last year, it was mainly Visual Studio Code and the extension on the side. But once I started getting into the command line interface, it just became a lot easier to work with for me. I think this could be a personal preference because I don't necessarily want to touch the code. So having that all abstracted out was a benefit for me. So I think three things I want to kind of focus on today. And obviously the big thing is I'm sharing my workflow. While I was preparing this talk, I was thinking, actually, there are some interesting things that came out of it. I think building and continuing to refine your workflow really helps with working with these products, working with these tools. I also have all my code and business intelligence and all the analytics and all the business side of things all together within the repo. And I think that's made life much easier for me as someone that's doing both product development, but also on the business side of things. And I have to look after that as well. So I think that's been kind of an interesting journey. And then finally, as many of you would know, the space moves really fast. Every other day you have a new model, a new tool, a new way to manage memories. And there's a lot of stuff that's coming out all the time. My current preference, and I've been through many cycles of using a lot of tools, cutting down on tools, and then always looking at what's new coming up. But what I found was keeping things simple has a lot of benefits in terms of both keeping my time more focused, keeping kind of my own context window more clear, but also it's less management that you have to do, less maintenance cost for maintaining the workflow. So these are sort of some of the key things that came out while I was preparing this talk. So I'm going to go over all this. I won't go into it right now, but it was kind of a reminder for myself. I wanted a chart to go over the setup. I don't want you you don't have to memorize this, but just very quickly as an overview, the way I work is I have Claude Code at the center that's sort of helping me orchestrating everything. I have all these signals coming in through custom MCPs or CLI tools. And these are directly from our Discord server, which is where our community is. And that's where I get bug reports, suggestions, and then just sort of temper check where the game is. And then we have data directly coming from the App Store, Google Play, and that's through their own APIs. And then we have data from analytics tools, Google Analytics, Game Analytics. The kind of problem we have is as a cross-platform product, we couldn't find analytics products that works on every single platform. So these are used for specific platforms only. But anyways, so I have custom MCPs that goes out and get data from these platforms. I run Database locally that's hooked up to our production DB. So then I get sort of server-side data analytics that way. And then finally, we have the sort of Playwright browser MCPs, and that helps with. So that's sort of like all the things that's coming into the orchestration layer. At the top, you can see this sort of project brain, and these are kind of how I manage the memory and knowledge base for the project. I have local documentations, and that's all within the repo. So these are persistent knowledge that we continue to update. And this has grown over time. It's quite a large set of documents now, and everything is in plain text, everything is in Markdown. And it's an easy way for the agent to work with. Claude.md, something that, this is a crucial part of working with Claude. It's constantly being updated. This is something that you want to be iterating on fairly frequently. Priorities. So this is a storage document that I use to keep track of what are the most important things that we should be working on right now. And I think one of the things I found difficult is when you have the capability of working on 10 things at once, sometimes, especially when you get signals from, let's say, your community, and then people want 3 different new things, it's very easy to just say, okay, spawn an agent and work on that thing, and lose sight of the priority. So I decided that, I have Post-it notes on my desk, but that's not quite enough. I need a way to really keep this thing focused, keep this thing small. So the priorities MD is a way of reminding myself what's important. And also because Claude knows these are the top priorities, it uses that to filter out, sort of prioritize all the tasks. And then finally, GitHub issues. So this is anything that's to be done or ideas that we might want to explore later. So they're not necessarily knowledge. So knowledge goes into the docs folder within the repo. GitHub issues is for tracking things that we might want to visit down the line. And sometimes if we're planning something, I'll save the plans there as well. And then we can continue sort of iterate on that on a asynchronous basis. So it's not something that's currently being actively worked on. But let's say if I want to go into releasing a Nintendo Switch version, then I might chuck that into GitHub issues, just in the background. Sometimes we'll visit it as we continue to develop. So that's how I kind of manage the knowledge, the brain of the project. I have a few agents set up. I don't have a ton, mainly because I find most of the time I can work directly with Claude Code to spin up agents on specific things. But there are 3 agents that I use that has specific knowledge that I've built up over time. And that's on the marketing side of things, it knows every marketing channel and every distribution channel we have, and then access to some of those channels for analytics. Economy is, I find having to manage a free-to-play game on your own, it is a lot of work. And the economy side of things, it gets very complicated. So I have an agent specifically set up to just keep track of the changes we've made, how the economy is looking, best practices from the industry, that sort of things. And finally, UI UX. So that's mainly for consistency, so that we have a consistent design for the client. And finally, output. So that's everything. Everything sort of goes in for Claude to act on. So we'll have. I keep saying we. Treat Claude as one of our team members now. So output is the actions that Claude actually takes, be it testing, or be it creating changes, pulling PRs, or sometimes it's just like getting me the reports I need to make decisions. I've had it reply directly on Discord before. I'm not sure if I do that again, or I mean, it's an interesting approach. I'm not sure that our community loves that a bot is talking to them. So that's something that I'm still deciding on. In any case, so that's a quick, it wasn't quick, but it was an overview of the structure. I want to quickly sort of go over the tools that I actually use. As you can probably see, it's not a huge number of things. So Cloud Code, so that runs everything. I use iTerm2, which is a terminal application on the Mac. And the nice thing about this is I can quickly organize everything in a tab interface. Actually, maybe I'll show it to you. This is if I'm not watching the chat, so if anyone has questions, just so I can make some noise so I can see. So for example, this is iTerm2, and you can see that I have like a bunch of different things set up. So each individual one is a terminal interface, and then you have your snippets. So sometimes I want to just quickly type in plan, review, implement, and then the slash command. I don't know if you can read this. It's not. So instead of typing all this out, I'll just double click on this and it paste into the sort of thread. And the other nice thing is I can quickly add a label to it, so I don't lose context of what this particular instance is working on, and I can quickly go through different tabs. It's a nice way of organizing everything, and at the top you can kind of see what it's the container is being run, the branches, and various different things. So that is that. Let me come back to the slides. So that's iTerm2. I definitely recommend it if you're on Mac. It's got way more features than I use, but it's a good one. Docker is for my dev container. We'll talk about that in a bit. I don't know what the sort of level of understanding or experience with our code is in the audience, but I'll quickly go over that anyway. It's a key part of what I think I do. Visual Studio Code, I use that mainly for file management these days because I don't go in and push code anymore necessarily. On the operation side of things, I use GitHub for PR issues and CI. And then Fly is our server. Fly is great because it's got CLI, so agents can manage that directly. Metabase for data. And then finally, I only have one plugin installed on Cloud Code, which is the Compound Engineering plugin. And it's comprehensive in that it's got a lot of different skills and agents you can use. I mainly use it for planning and code review locally. And what it does is it spins up 5-7 different agents to tackle different areas. So for example, it might look at security, it might look at, are you overcomplicating code? It will check syntax, it will check a bunch of different things, but in its individual sub-agents. So that's been very helpful. I mainly use it for more complex tasks. So if it's to do with authentication or payment, as cross-platform project, then those are tricky. Those needs a lot of care. So I'll run compound engineering against those tasks. One thing to note, sometimes if I run let's say a code review through compound engineering on more than 2 or 3 instances of Claude Code, then it might crash Claude Code just because too many agents are running. But other than that, it's a pretty good plugin to have. I don't really use anything else at the moment. So I have
One question. Thanks. If you go back to the previous slide, can you explain a little bit again what is compound engineering?
right. Okay, yeah. So compound engineering is let me pull up the page. So it's a plugin for Claude Code, and what it does is it provides you with another set of tools. I'll share it. So this is their GitHub page. So it provides you with another set of tools that the agents can use. So for example, I'll use their planning skill. So after I've discussed with Claude a feature, Claude comes back with a plan. I'll run this specific skill. And what it does is Claude would now spin up 5 different agents to review this plan from different perspectives. So one might be a security agent that's looking at the security impacts of this plan. The other one might be an over-engineering agent who looks at your plan and decide if you're doing too much or if you're overcomplicating your code. So that's useful to have. And I also use it for code review. So once the code is done, again, I spin this up. I just type in this command, and then it spawns a number of agents and looking at the various different aspects of the changes you've just made. And so it's a kind of more organized way of spinning up agents with instructions that they've already provided. So I find that to be very useful, especially as someone I haven't got an engineering background. So I kind of trust that, okay, this is something that's been built up over time, that's got good sort of engineering best practices built in. So I can use this to review the changes that's been made. Does that make sense?
So I have a follow-up question. So how did you run into compound engineering, and why did you choose this? Because there's a lot of other similar repositories that do similar things. And then have you tried others, or like what is like the advice there?
It was from a company that I used to keep track of. They were working on, I think they were working on something similar to like a coding agent on their own. So it was through that, and I've been following them for a while. I don't exactly remember how I found that company in the first place, but because I know they were kind of dogfooding their own tools, so I kind of trusted this. I have tried some other plugins and found that this one just gives me, it's very comprehensive, and it has caught a lot of things that I've overlooked. And to be honest, this is kind of not coming from a technical analysis, but just from like my experience so far. If I run into complex issues, I run those. It tends to find things that I've missed, and yeah, so that's why I've reduced the number of plugins I use, but because I still use it quite a lot, so I've kept it.
Sir, just want to double check my understanding. So you're using this particularly more for spawning agents automatically to go through each of these steps directly without like basically when there's issue, when there's a say engineering request, you will trigger this and then it will go through each of these steps without you needing to look into it, and then you just need to review afterwards. Is that the correct understanding?
I think, yeah, kind of. So what happens is when you work with Claude Code, oftentimes you kind of split your work into different stages. Right? So like you have your planning phase where you kind of discuss, this is a feature I want, and then iterate with Claude on how you're going to actually implement it. So once that's done, you have a plan. These are the files that it's going to make changes on. So now we have a plan. I run this against that plan. So basically now multiple agents are spawned to review this plan, but they're going to be reviewing it from different angles. So that's the planning agent. Once it's gone through this iteration of planning, we've come up with, and then throughout this period, it will ask you questions. Do you want to keep this, or this is you're doing too much here? Should we reduce the scope? So you go through all these questions, and then it comes back with a kind of updated plan. And at which point you can say, okay, now go ahead and implement that. And the implementation phase is usually actually the easiest part, because you basically, it just goes and follows the plan, make the edits on the files. Once that's done, you can then run the review skill. And then this is when, again, more agents are being spawned to look at what's actually being done and how that's going to impact the rest of the project. So this is a multi-step kind of check. I'm checking the same planning, the same code multiple times from different angles. So this is why I said earlier that I only use this for kind of like mission critical features, because it eats up a lot of tokens. Like this is a long process. But for something like authentication or anything that touches security, I tend to run it through this just because I want to make sure that it's as good as I can make it. Right? So this is what I do.
Got it. So basically more towards, so this is actually triggered manually after you have reviewed whether this is worth the token to go through this engineering process or not.
Yeah, so you can type these in directly, but they can also be part of your slash command. And I'll talk about slash command in a bit, but I have something set up where I will do slash wrap and to wrap up a feature. And then Claude is going to go through the feature and decide how much review is necessary and how many rounds of review is necessary. But you can integrate it into a longer prompt.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Great. Okay. So that's the compound engineering plugin. So I thought about talking about my day. So I always start my day with this slash command morning, and I thought about running this live, but I don't. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. So I'm gonna just show you what this does, and then it will give you a flavor of how it might work at the moment. So this then basically goes into all the different channels where I get signals from. Earlier I was talking about the architecturing of the, where is it? Here, right? All the signals from the live operation of the game, plus brain of the project, like what's currently in flight, what are the top priorities, what's on GitHub, what's been shipped recently, and then it comes back with, and at the moment, I just last week I've hooked it up to App Store and Google Play as well. So now it's got some business data to work with. And then when this is done, it's going to come back and give me a kind of list of like top priorities for the day. And then from there, I can say, spawn an agent to work on this one thing, another one to work on the second thing, a third one to work on the third thing. And I find it to be a good kind of like kickoff point for the day. And then I feel like I have a good overview of what's been going on, both in terms of where I am with the development, where we are with the community, looking at our stats, just some like quick overview of what's been happening in the last 24 hours in terms of are we over suddenly getting a spike in traffic or things like that. So it's come back. Right? So okay, it's looking at like, active my priorities. As you can kind of see, I'm preparing a Steam version, some backend stuff. These are like things that I've been working on. Some of them we can probably remove. They're done. Here's bug report. So this is directly from the Discord, and then this is also directly from Discord, and some issues. Right. So that's a quick way for me to say, okay, now we've got, this is the priority for me for the day.
Sorry, how do you determine your priorities? Is it something that is based on the automatically generated based on the issues that were raised, or is it something that you input into the priorities.md?
So it's both. Yeah, so you're right. It's actually both. So it goes through the bug channel to see if there's any game-breaking bugs right now. And then it scans GitHub issues to see if there are any high-priority open issues that we didn't finish. It looks at all the current branches that the various agents might have opened up. So this will be like the repos on my local machine to see if there's anything that we didn't finish working from the day before. So it's got this huge list of things that we could work on, but then it also looks at the priorities document, which only has, I usually keep no more than 5 items on there. So then we filter everything else through the lens of these priorities. And these priorities also have deadlines I'm trying to meet. So then I try to balance out like what needs to be done today and how do I get to those deadlines. Usually it's pretty good at estimating how much work is involved. I think it tends to overestimate the time, to be honest. Oftentimes it'll tell you it will take 2 days when it takes it in 2 hours. Yeah, so that's how the priority is determined. Great. So just very quickly, I think a lot of you probably use this already, but I use def containers so that I can run on Cloud Code in the dangerously skipping permission mode. I think there's a new name for it now. But so this basically means that I have does anyone want me to go a bit more detail into this, or you kind of know what this does already? I'm going to assume that. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, def containers definitely use that. I think I have a few things added up. So I have a script that runs the def container, and I always make sure that it attaches to the right container, because sometimes you'll have it attaching to the wrong container, and things get messy. So that's one thing. Work trees always use work trees and new branches with agents. Obviously, I've run into situations where I have 8 agents, and then occasionally they'll stop following the Claude IMD rule, and then kind of the changes got mixed up in different branches. So that's something to be aware of. I'm going to skip that. So my process has changed a bit. So initially, especially with Claude code in command line, you can just have a screen of 6 to 8 terminals open and just have them run. And it's quite incredible to see how much work is being done. But also, it's quite difficult for me to switch context. I think I was always kind of like stressed because I'm responding to things constantly, and I have to remember what an agent is doing. So I kind of changed it to. I think this is when Claude released agent teams. So I started using agent teams where I have one kind of main producer agent that manages all the sub-agents that are working on different PRs. This is still within the command line interface. And I found that to be much better in terms of just my sanity and like in terms of like keeping my own clarity on what's going on. But in the last, I would say, month or so, and I don't know how many people have played around with Cloud Code channels. I've now switched everything almost entirely to using Cloud Code channels. And the idea is it's kind of interesting, right? Because Cloud Code channels, the basics of it is you can now hook up a local terminal instance to Discord or Telegram. So you can just text it. And you can do that remotely. So you can do that on the phone. It talks to your computer, and it does work directly on your computer. But what I found was because of the way they've set it up, spawning up agents to work on things is the default. So I don't have to tell it, spawn agents to work on these things. Now, oftentimes, if I run my morning briefing from Cloud Code channel, it comes back with a list of things. I'll just say, work on these 3 things. It automatically spawns agents. It automatically manages those processes for me. So I found that to be very effective. So that's my main thing. That's the main thing I use now.
Can you show the Cloud Code channels? I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Right. So this is my channel with Cloud Code, right? So you kind of use it as you would with the CLI, but the process is still being run locally on my machine. So I can still go to the terminal and see how it's working, but it also simplifies the interface dramatically. Let me see if I can find an earlier example where we're kind of like spawn. Okay, so for example, here, it's giving me like 3 things. And then it will go out and then spawn agents. So I told it to spawn agents to work on these things. So then it starts to work on various different things simultaneously, but it doesn't stop talking to me. The main kind of Claude instance is still responsive, so I can still talk to it. And there are some added benefits for using Claude within Discord. And one of the things which you can kind of see here is it makes code really easy to read because Discord has this sort of built-in formatting, and you can just quickly copy and paste things if you need to. So I found that to be very useful, and also because, and I think I have a slide for this later on, but because we have all these Discord connections built in already, we have all these Discord bot connected to the game. I can have it. And we have all these activities. For example, I go to bug report. I can directly say, well, I can just say, like, I can just forward this bug to the Claude Code channel, and then it can just it has access to it. It can even reply directly to it. Another thing that's useful is I can forward this to a private channel, so then I can save this message, right? Because like context management, sometimes it's tricky. I don't always want to. I don't want to lose anything important. But if Claude crashes or if I somehow it gets compacted, then I lose that. So if anything important, I can just quickly forward that to a private channel. I'll keep that very quickly, get kind of like a quick save feature in a way. One downside of this is tables. Discord doesn't display like here. You have like, the table is just messy. It doesn't render markdown tables very well. So that's one issue. And then also sometimes it does lose connection. So I'll have to say, make sure you're replying to Discord instead of replying in the terminal. And that's a known bug. They'll be fixing that hopefully soon. But yeah, so that's the Qualcomm channel that I use. And yeah, again, you can use this on the go as well, which I particularly enjoy because if I'm out of the house, I can say, when this code review is done, merge to staging, and then that's all done. Okay, great. Yeah, so Claude Code channel, I definitely recommend checking it out. And I think it's in preview at the moment, but it's been working really well for me. So this is some of the things we already talked about. And I think I mentioned this before already. In terms of memory management, it's important. I think a lot of what's possible for me to do is because over time I've built up like documentations and a knowledge base. I shy away from using anything fancy. I think Claude does a decent job of finding information if the information is there. Definitely use. I just stick to tags and MD files so that if I need to read it, I can use Obsidian or something similar. But always keep things memorized by Claude. Update memory as frequently as you can. I think that's been very important. And the interesting thing is I started a new project and quickly realized that even though I'm using the same version of Claude and the same models, it doesn't behave the same way because the new project doesn't have this built up knowledge of workflows and memories. So I think it's worth investing time to like really refine your system. So this is just a quick slide on the MCPs. So I've set up the MCPs to hook into the platforms, Discord, Analytics, and Metabase. I use custom MCPs, meaning they're built by Claude. And part of the reason is I don't want any bloating of tooling. If you use a third-party MCP server, oftentimes it comes with tools that you might not use, and then it just kind of increases. I definitely prefer command line tools over MCPs. They're just more direct, more efficient, and you know what you get. So if we are working with any SaaS companies, platforms, or for example with GitHub, like use GitHub CLI instead of GitHub MCP. I wanted to leave more time for questions, but I'll go through the rest rather quickly, and then you guys can ask questions if you want to. In terms of testing, there are two main things. There's sort of unit testing, and then the manual testing part. For programmatic testing, I have policies set up in Claude MD where if a feature falls into these categories, especially backend, if it touches database, or if it's the core like gameplay mechanics, and those already have testing from before, but testing will be required. If it's anything else, then you don't need to write tests, that's fine. So that's on the programmatic testing side of things. And then for anything that requires human to test, and for us, because the game is in 3D, there's just a lot of elements that you can't test directly without going in and sort of moving camera around and things like that. Then I have Claude write a test plan for this new feature. So, for example, I was launching a new PEV mode as a prototype, and it requires a lot of clicking and moving things around, making sure the UI actually works. So Claude would write a test plan. I would have it send it to a Claude in Chrome extension. So with Claude, you can do Claude and then -- Chrome, which gives it access to Chrome via the extension. And here, it can actually go in and just click and move things around, sort of navigate the interface directly, sort of natively. And I found this to be very useful. It's not very fast because it needs to take a screenshot, do the action. So if I do this, I tend to run it overnight. Always use a dedicated Chrome profile, so limit sort of like the risk radius. And the sort of nice thing about having this setup is also if I have to fill out a form on Steamworks, or if I have to set up achievements manually and we have like close to 100 achievements, I can have Claude do that for me directly. Right, it's doing this in the browser. I used to run CI and code review on every single branch with every single changes. But as the models get better and as my kind of documentation and workflow improve, I am kind of moving away from that. So now code review only happens when a remote PR is pulled. I no longer do local CI check, and I rarely do local code review other than the high profile ones. And then the CI check is only when we merge to staging, so not every branch. Because what I found was most of the time we don't find anything. I'm just sort of wasting a lot of time. But I think this comes with both better tooling, better models now, but also because we're continue to refine the workflow. So like the risk is getting smaller. Yeah, so that's my sort of little experience to share with you. And again, I think continue to build your workflow is important. Have those slash commands really helps. I have a lot of the CI stuff inside the repo, so that even for things like this conversation, I can have Claude Code kind of help me think through all the setup, because it's got the knowledge of the code base, it's got the knowledge of the game, so I can have it draft pitches or fill out forms or prepare things like this. And then I think finally, just I like to keep things simple. I think this space is very fast and very complicated sometimes, and have the basics set up, and then I think everything else a lot of times just I sort of take a wait and see kind of approach. That more tools isn't necessary, better tools. So if anyone has any questions, let me know.
Yeah. So, can you explain how much you look at the code and how do you ensure entropy doesn't build up over time?
I don't look at the code, to be very honest. I rarely do. Partially because I don't think I know it better than Claude. As I kind of mentioned before, it's not the stack is not something I'm very familiar with. I rely on a lot of checks. If it's something that I'm not super familiar with, I'll have the review agents go over and over again. And also, every PR goes to GitHub. We have the GitHub reviewer. So on GitHub, I forgot to mention this. On GitHub, I have Claude Code installed as well. So it will do a review every time something is pushed to the repair. Yeah, so it's a lot of kind of reiterating on the reviews. Go ahead. Was it Kashav? Have you got a question?
Thank you, Brendan, for walking us through this. There's actually quite a bit to really process and understand. But one thing that I sort of want to understand better is how do you actually go about, say, the economy example? How do you pull the data? How does the analysis happen? Who does the analysis? And how do you get an output? And how does that get implemented?
Right. So the economy, because all the business intelligence agents and tools are in the same repo, I have Claude kind of review our current setup. It can go out and look at best practices and then sort of build up a knowledge around that, and that's documented. So every time I want to do a review, I go into what we've documented before, our past performances, and then pulls new data from the current game, the live service game, to compare what's happened. And the live data comes from the MCPs and the tools that I kind of mentioned earlier. Right, so we have MCPs, and I think actually App Store is their own API tool. So it goes out, finds live data, and then also compare it to the knowledge that is built up.
So is it the compound engineering plugin which does the analysis?
No, so I have an agent set up, and that's just basically it runs the same model as Cloud Code, right? So, but the agent provides additional context that I don't need for coding. That's why it's like a separate thing. And sometimes if you're working on a new economy item, I would say also check with the economy agent to make sure that this implementation doesn't affect, or it's actually not going to make the economy worse. So there's a little bit of that, but it's not an external thing. The agent is something that I built up for the game.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Jonas, have you got a question for me?
Oh, we can't hear you. You're talking, I think. No, cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So did I understand correctly? You've been doing this since 2023?
2024.
2024, yeah, because things have been moving a lot. So I guess it was quite a different experience. But you also mentioned that you were primarily Unity front-end developer. So did you build all of it with the agents from the scratch, or did you have more like back-end oriented programmer on the team earlier and now just maintain it using the agents, or is it built like this the whole way?
The game was built from my co-founder built the game over time. So it's actually the game. We started the project 6 years ago, and it was a very small game to begin with, and over time it sort of became this big thing. And which is actually brought up an interesting point, which is that now oftentimes Claude would come back and want to clean up things because there are things that just probably shouldn't be in there. And there was like a hacking incident that was just code that was from before. So it's in the past year and a half, I think the code base changed quite a bit because of the new workflow. But I didn't start out from nothing. Like it was a game from before.
Right. So my other question is, how would you say is your job typically is that maintaining the pipeline, and how much time do you spend in that? Because in my workflow, I'm still doing a lot of hands-on programming. I guess I'm not level 5; I'm level 4 here. For talking from there, but still, so how do you split your time between actually working on the product and working on the process?
It's still mainly it's a bit of both, right? Like so, it's mainly on the product, right? So like, there's a lot of new features that's coming out. Like at the moment, I'm shipping new features way faster than before because of this workflow. But while you're shipping new features, I am telling Claude now we've just gone through 5 minutes of back and forth on this thing. We don't need to do that again in the future. Remember this, and then this is where you document this. Then I either remember this to your internal memory, or no, this needs to go into the Claude IMD, or is this something that you only reference when you're working on tournaments, then that goes into the documentation inside Docs. So I'm improving the workflow while I'm working.
Okay, and then I just have to ask, the learning, when it's the right time to put it into the docs or whether it should become a new skill or whatever. Has this been like a self-taught process, or do you have any great resource to recommend to help
I
you?
started, so kind of adopted something where when I was using Klein, it has this concept of memory bank. And it was really useful when I was using Klein. Without it, it would get lost very quickly. But once they kind of introduced this idea, and this was early last year, I think. So for every project, I would have a memory bank. And then, but once I moved on to Cloud Code, kind of just decided, well, it's got its own memory. I think memory bank is kind of a confusing name. What we're really doing here is just documentations for the game, documentations for analytics, and some toolings around that. So I changed that to Docs, and then it's just become more of an organic thing where I continue to add things to it. There was a point where I kind of consciously decided what goes into Docs and what goes onto GitHub issues. And it wasn't super clear initially for me, but I think nowadays it's like permanent knowledge goes to Docs, sort of like temporal action items go to GitHub issues. And that's quite a good split.
And how do you deal with the fact that there are new models coming out all the time? Do you always upgrade, or is it a disruptive thing when that happens? You have to change a lot of stuff for it to work well?
I almost always use the latest one if I can. I haven't found any issue with that strategy. There, like the last few weeks, I did notice Claw was not being as efficient, but for the most part, because of all the review process, things get flagged. So I feel like even if it's like a slight downgrade occasionally, it hasn't been an issue. But that's one of the next things I'm looking at is potentially having a local model backup, right? Because if whenever Claude goes down, then I'm kind of stuck. And fortunately, there hasn't been doing any server issues. But so that's one thing that I've been investigating. And I think there are some really good local models you can host now that can do 90% of the job. Yeah,
Cool.
that's my thought.
Related to that, perhaps, but if you don't mind, I just ask and you answer if you want or not. But how much is the budget to run something like this? How much do you have to spend on tokens?
It is. I just use the max plan. I don't.
Yeah, and
it fits in that. Occasionally it pushes close, but it doesn't actually. It's heavily subsidized, so it actually fits. Yeah, no worries.
Cool, thanks. So I'm more interested about the docs that you mentioned. Can you maybe screen share and then show what you've discovered, what works, what doesn't work, how you hold the docs, and kind of building on top of Jonas's question as well. It's like, like you said when you're doing a new feature or whenever you're doing something, you update the docs. And do you have like a template or something? So maybe just go over the docs and then
I'll show you that. I know we're going over a bit, so if anyone needs to go, feel free. I won't be offended. So this is the sort of my docs folder. So this is everything. Actually, I can load this up in Visual Studio Code as well if you prefer, but I find it easier to read if I put it in here. But let me just quickly show you what it looks like in the repo, actually. That might just be a better sort of overview for it.
By the way, what's this application that makes it view?
Oh, that's Obsidian. So I'll type in. It's a note-taking Obsidian. It's a note-taking app for lockdown files. So I use that to organize sort of my personal knowledge. Let me share. I'll share this with you in Visual Studio Code because I think that's what people are familiar with. So for example, now we're going to get into code. So this is my MCP server, right? Like for the project, and then so these are all Discord, App Store, Google Play, sort of analytics stuff. So this is all custom. Playwright is not a custom one. It's just something that cloud compound engineering actually installs this. So docs is down here. So as you can see, there's like a ton of stuff. From like game design stuff that I was studying a skill rating. So then I would work with Claude on this document. And it gets quite complex, but for me, I'm just talking to it. I'm just like, okay, this is good, this is not good. Give me a summary. Let's review stuff. I don't read any of the code stuff. I just trust that it knows what it's doing, but because I don't write TypeScript code. So once this is done, this becomes the internal knowledge for skill ratings. So every time we make changes, we'll come back to this document and then make sure that this document is synchronized with what's actually in the game. And this is actually also in my Claude.md instruction. Anything, just keeping the docs and the game synchronized. So that's a rule. So that's one example. I have some loot box mechanisms, so that's tracked with some of these documents. So that's kind of like I said. Economy has a whole bunch of things. BI stuff, or even things like when there was a spike or the server went down, what happened, how we handle that. That's all saved here. And the reason why that's here, even though it's sort of a temporary thing, is because like some of that knowledge is useful in the future. So then in that case, I'll say, okay, now save this in docs because that's useful knowledge. I don't know if that's helpful, but like as you can see, there's a lot. I use this quite a lot.
No, it's helpful.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Brandon. Very comprehensive. I'm so sorry to just take your time a little bit longer. So I want to understand whenever you ship a product or ship a feature, do you do like say A/B test, and how would you know that this feature is not going to impact your what you call so-called as economy, right? So there's no impact on say the revenue or maybe say conversion rate, etc. Do you do some kind of like a flow here to automatically test it out?
So I don't do A/B testing at the moment. I probably should, to be honest. But at the moment, a lot of what I'm working on is just more content because there's a lot of ideas from the community we want to introduce. So what I do at the moment is we ship something, and usually it will be in the form of, if I load it up, of like I just slap a kind of like data label on it, or like an early access kind of label. And then I track analytics from the live data. Let me just share this. Right. So so this feature is half baked. It's functionally working, but there are a lot of things I would like to improve on this. So I put data on a tournament. So, and this is a personal preference, is I prefer to ship things into the game and then we just track how people actually use it. And you can, because the game's been out for a while, so I kind of know what a typical behavior looks like. And if something is working or not, you can kind of benchmark against that relative. You can kind of see the effect. So it's more time-based rather than A/B testing. But we've been able to see. The other thing is, if I can't tell the difference over a 3-month period, then it's probably not impactful enough for me to do over-engineer the process. But so far, we've been just from the last few, we're looking at like decent impact on detention and monetization, just through kind of like this fairly basic setup.
And yep.
Sorry.
So basically, you're kind of like doing monitoring on the numbers, right? Do you set up an alert system in your data to make sure that whenever there is like you just now you show some kind of like incidents there? I'm not entirely sure. Is it because like a certain matrix that went down, or is it because something crashes? How do you track all of these incidents? And Is it like automatically solved, or you need to like run manually a certain skills? How does it look like basically when an alert or an incident happen? Or maybe first thing on monitoring first on the alerts. Do you have something like that?
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about, and by the entire time is like this. It's not, even though we're talking about like agentic workflow, and you can definitely set up alerts. So we have alerts on like if too many errors have been sent, then I get a message on Discord, and then this is monitored with Axiom. So it's like a third party kind of services. What do you call it? Like a SaaS platform that monitors performance. We ship all the logs into kind of like a separate platform that sends us any critical error rate. But outside of that, because I'm constantly on Discord, the community is active. So if anything is wrong, I know I'll get a ping. Like we have different layers of staff, even people kind of like categorizing bug requests, going through like kind of like a triage process for me. So that's been good. And this is not really agentic, but I have this tab open just to look at what's the server doing, what's the DB doing, and if anything happens, I'll see what's going on. So that's sort of like the alert system. I'm gonna show this code again. So if you go here, like someone is always so not Lawson, he's always sort of like monitoring the bugs that's coming in, suggestions that's coming in. Yeah, so there's a level of like not necessarily automation. The community is part of the workflow, I suppose.
Cool, thank you.
Maybe we can ask one last question, guys. If you guys have any questions, if not, I'll ask. All right, Brandon. Can you tell me like show priorities.md? I think you mentioned that it's like an important file.
Let me just read it first because we've got some deals going on at the moment. I don't know if I can share everything, but okay, I think it's fine. Okay. Yeah, so I'll show you directly on here. So this is the file, right? So like immediate things is I'm preparing a Steam launch. We're gearing up for next fest. So anything related to that is there. I have 3 draft PRs that I need to work on. And then I need to do some work on Google Play. So that's that. And then it gives me like things that you cannot do that requires like human to do it. Then it sort of gives me that. And then previous stuff. This is all information that I don't need. This is all for the agent to have some context around some of these priorities. So for example, you'll see like, okay, some of these Steam stuff is done, and that's related to the top priority. So this bit is I go in and change this, or I'll ask the agent to sort of manage that part. So it's not. This is fairly simple. It actually I can probably simplify that even more. But this bit is important because this is like, oh well, Claude can't build a desktop app without a bunch of things. So then I'll need to go and do that. So then I'll have to come in and like review this for me.
Cool. Yeah, Brandon, thank you for joining and sharing. I'm pretty sure everyone here appreciates. And guys, go play BattleTabs, and you can hit up Brandon on LinkedIn if you have future questions. And next week, we're going to have Alto come and share his experience with us. I'll drop the event link, and we're going to continue doing this every Wednesday. So you're going to be able to just feel free to subscribe to Level 5, and whenever you see someone interesting or a topic that interests you, you can always hop in and join. Thanks for joining.
Just quickly, if I'm going to put my email there. If you have any feedback on the talk, let me know, because I'm only just starting to kind of like share my experience, and it would be great to know like what was interesting, what was useful, or like what are some of the things that you already know. That's just like I didn't have to talk about. So any feedback, please email me, let me know. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me, and thanks for the invitation, Demi. That was fun.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. All right, guys, see you. Have a good day, night, morning.